Python coders. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about a fairly important topic in PyQt and PySide, and that is signals and slots. So when we're designing the interface of our application, especially if we're using a tool like Qt Designer, we have the ability to lay out fairly nice looking displays and screens. The problem is, in order for this to be of any use, these things have to be connected to code. And in order to do that in PySide PyQt, we need to learn about signals and slots. Okay, so a signal is a property of an object that can be emitted in response to some type of event. For instance, let's take a look at a button like the submit or exit buttons here. Okay, the signal would be when the button is clicked. All right, so in other words, it's a response to some type of event. When I put text into my enter text field here, if I want it to go into here, I have to be watching, and the event is going to be if they put data in here. Slots are object methods that can receive a signal, and then they can do something in response to that. So we connect the two. We connect signals to slots in order to configure our application's response to events. So let's try and look at this demo application here, and let's add some functionality to it. If I go into PyCharm, you'll see that I have a skeleton for this created already. However, there's really no functionality. If I hit the clear button, submit button, exit button, nothing happens. Okay? Let's deal with the close button first. I already have code in here to, when we first go into this form, it's going to set the cursor focus to the enter text field. So let's deal with the button. So the exit button, at least. So we're going to say self.pushButton exit. Okay, and the signal we're going to work with is clicked. So we're going to say dot clicked dot connect. And then we have to say, what do we want to connect that to? Well, in this case, we're going to connect to a method in QWidget called close. So I'm going to connect it to self.close. Now when I run this app again, or this program again, if I click the enter button, or the exit button, excuse me, the window closes. All right, something a little bit more interesting is, let's say that as we type into the enter text field, we want that to show up automatically in the display text field. So what we do, I can take a look at my documentation here, and I'm looking at the documentation for QLineEdit, and I can see what signals and slots do I have available. So the signals that I have that I want to work with here is text changed. So as they're typing into my enter text field, I can capture that that text is changing. That signal is going to be emitted. I want to pass that to the slot in the other line edit, my display text, which is going to be the set text. So going back into PyCharm, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.lineEntry enter text dot text changed, and we want to connect that to self.lineEntry display text, and we're going to do set text, and we actually don't need the parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to do now, so I'm going to run this. And as you see, as I'm typing into the enter text, the data is automatically going into display text. That's because I have the signal from the enter text change connected to the display text set text method. All right, now let's also, my insert is off. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's deal with the clear button. So what we do is we want to have the clear button actually do a couple of different things. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to self push button, and we're going to say clear dot clicked dot connect to the line, to the self dot line edit enter text dot clear. Next, we're going to attach the same button, so self push button clear dot clicked dot connect, and we're going to connect that to self dot line entry display text dot clear. Third thing I wanted to do, so I'm going to say self dot push button clear dot clicked dot connect, and I'm going to attach it to line entry enter text dot set focus. Now you may be saying, well, you've connected one signal to multiple slots. And yes, I have. And that's perfectly fine. I can attach this clicked signal of my push button clear to as many slots as I want. As long as they're there, I can connect to them. So now if I run this again, you see I can put data into here, and then I can hit clear. It clears both fields, and it sets my cursor back into my entry text. That works pretty simple. So in this particular case, I have one button, which is my clear button, attached to multiple slots. All right, now let's say that when we fill in the enter text, we want to be able to hit the submit button and have that be moved into display text. So what we're going to do that is we're actually going to create a custom slot. So I'm going to take this code out of here because this is what we're going to be replacing. And we want to create a new custom method for doing that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a decorator. And the decorator is going to come from Qt core, and it's going to be slot. Now, why would I decorate a method as a slot? Well, there are a couple of different reasons. Number one, in these parentheses, I can define what type of data do I want to pass to this slot. So if I'm going to pass a string, I can actually use the string data type in here. Lists, dictionaries, even other objects can be passed to the slot. And by defining that in here, I can actually make this type safe. So if I try to pass to my slot a integer, or no, if I want to pass into my slot an integer, and I try to pass it a string, I will actually get an error. So it enforces some type safety. The other thing about defining these as actual slots is, from what I've been reading, the memory footprint is less, and in some situations there might be a slight performance boost. Now, I've never experienced this myself. I'm guessing this has to be for a really, really big PyQt, PySide application. But the main important thing is enforcing the type safety when you do pass data to the slot. And the other big thing is Um, by adding this decorator, you know that that method is a slot. And if you don't need to call it just on its own, if it's always going to be connected to something's signal, this is definitely a good way to go, especially visually, because then you'll be able to look at that and say, oh, that's a slot, so that's got to be connected to something. So we're going to define a new slot called button submit. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to take the contents of the, so we'll say self dot display text dot set text. And where the text is actually going to come from is self dot enter text dot text. And we need to call that because we actually need the data out of it. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to call self dot line entry enter text dot clear. And then I'm going to also set my cursor focus while I'm here to text dot set focus. Now the only thing that's missing is the connection between the button and our custom slot here. So I'll put that right here. Let's see, self dot push button submit dot clicked dot connect, and I'll connect it to self dot button submit. And this is the type of naming convention that I actually do like to use. So you'll see I do prefix my widgets so I can get at them very quickly. And then the slots that I create for buttons, I usually have button in front of them. That way I know this is usually going to be attached to a button. All right, so if we run this, now I can type in the enter text. When I hit submit, you'll see it moves it down to the display text, it clears the field, and it sets the cursor focus. I can type in here again, and if I hit clear, you'll see it wipes both of those fields out. If I do this again, you'll see it moves the data. Okay, so let's shift our focus back to Qt Designer for a moment. And what I want to show you is that in certain situations, I can use the built-in signals and slot editor inside Qt Designer to do some fairly simple things. So if I come down here, your Qt Designer might have brought up the resource browser by default. So if you come down and click on the signal slot editor, it'll show you the signals and slot editor. There are some restrictions when defining signals and slots, well, at least the connections, inside of Qt Designer. Number one, I can only use the built-in Qt signals and slots. So if I do have a large custom slot that I've created, I won't be able to connect to it. It doesn't know anything about the Python code that we're working with. Also, I can only work with the widgets, the signals and slots on the widgets that are in this window. So let's say that we wanted to define in Qt Designer the signal to close this window. That's going to be on our exit button. So I come down here, I can hit the little plus. Then if I double click here, my sender is going to be my push button exit. The signal is going to be clicked. The receiver is going to be the actual window itself, which is based on QWidget. And the slot is going to be closed. Now, if I preview this using Control R, you'll see where normally we have no functionality inside this window. If I hit the exit button, it actually does exit. Let's add a few more to handle the clear button. So in this case, it's going to be push button clear. Signal is going to be clicked. Receiver is going to be the enter text. And the slot is going to be clear. We'll do that again. Push button clear. Signal is going to be clicked. The receiver is going to be the display text, and the slot is going to be clear. Once more, we can do push button clear. Signal is going to be clicked. The receiver is going to be the enter text, and the slot is going to be set focus, which is where? Set focus right there. All right, I'll go ahead and save this. And then if I do Control R, you'll see that if I put text in my enter text, submit does nothing. But if I hit clear, you'll see that it cleared the field and it put my cursor back in that field. So technically, I do have some application functionality here. Going back to PyCharm, if I retranslate that window to Python code, and then I go ahead and open it, you'll see that here are my signals and slots connected together. And if I go back into my demo application here, I can actually delete all of these, and I can delete closing the window. And now this should run exactly the same. So exit will now close the window. I can type data in. My submit will handle that. And then if I clear, both windows clear and the cursor focus gets set back. Now, one of the downsides that I see to establishing your connections between signals and slots in Qt Designer is it tends to be a little bit abstract when you're looking at an application like this. How does this window close? If you look at the code, there doesn't seem to be any code in here to close the window. It's only when I open up the generated code that I'm importing that I see that I have some signals and slots that are connected together. So that can be kind of a downside to doing it this way, is I don't really like going into these generated files. I just know that all of my user interface elements are in here and they're generated in here. I don't like to have application logic in here, although you can. A common way to do that would be the window close. So maybe you don't put anything else in here, but maybe you put in your window close. Or in this particular case, if you were overriding the close method, maybe what you would do is you would have your clear button linked to clear all of your fields at once. That would be a pretty simple use for connecting them in here. However, not generally the way I like to do it, but you can. It just makes it a little bit more abstract in your main Python file. Okay, so that takes care of one window. But what if we have the situation where we have two windows and we want to pass data from one window to the other? So let's take a look at this window that I've created. And this is the first window that's going to pop up. And it's going to say welcome. Click change text to change this text. And then when I click change text, another window is going to pop up that lets me type in some text. So I'll show you that. So when I click in here and I type in some data, when I click submit, it's going to pass that data back to the first window. And then the first window is going to display that data. Okay, so here's my program. This is just a simple skeleton at the moment. So if I run this, you'll see we have welcome, click change text to change this text. When I click that, it brings up the second form. However, right now, there's no functionality here. So submit does absolutely nothing. And this is the application logic that we want to put in. So what we need to do is we need to look at this window here. This is the second window. We need to define a custom signal inside of this window. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to define a custom signal called submitted. And that is going to be from Qt core, and that's actually going to be a signal. And in this case, I want to define what data do I want to be sent out, or what data type do I want to be sent out when I emit this signal. And in this particular case, that's going to be string. So we define a signal named submitted, and we base that off of Qt core signal, and we want to pass out string data. We can actually pass out multiples, but for this particular example, we'll keep it simple. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add some functionality for when the submit button is actually pressed. So in that particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom slot. And I'm going to call the slot, let's see, button submit. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to emit this signal. So I'm going to say self.submitted.emit. So I've emitted the signal. What do I want to pass with that signal? And that's going to come from self.lineentryText.text. And I need to actually call this because I need it to pull the data that they entered into that field. Second thing I can do is I can call self.close. Because once they've typed data in and they've hit the submit button, then we can go ahead and close the window. Next thing I need to do is I need to make the connection between the submit button and our custom slot right here. So I can say self.pushButtonSubmit.clicked.connect, and we're going to connect that to self.buttonSubmit. All right, that should take care of window number 2. All right, you'll notice how in window number 2, I don't have a self.show. You'll see that I actually have a self.show for that form down here. Okay, so this is what happens when on the first window we hit the button change text. So I'm going to be creating the second window right here, and then I actually show it right here. And that's because I need to make a connection. So I need to say self.form.submitted.connect, and then I can say self.label display text.set text. I don't need to call it, I just need to connect it. So that means that when this submitted signal is emitted, connect it to this. And that what that really means under the covers is the data that came with it. I want you to dump that string data into this display text. And I have to do that before I show the form. So that's why the form show, the show method is actually down here, where normally you would see me put it right in the initialization method. All right, so let's run this. It says welcome, click change text. See, there is still two windows. I can put new text in here. I can hit submit. It closes the window and it changes the text. Now, the argument could be made that you could do the same thing without using signals and slots by maybe grabbing the data out of the text entry field before that window closes. But the problem with that is it gets kind of messy. And also, what we want is we want a very loose connection between these two windows. And using signals and slots gives us the ability to do that. One window doesn't need to know much about window number two, and vice versa. So we just emit the signal, the data goes with it, the first window grabs it and sticks it into the display text field. Okay, very, very, very simple. You can also use signals and slots to control application flow. For instance, if they're on a dialog box, you could emit a signal back to the parent window that they're done, and maybe you need to reload a table or something like that. In any event, if you have any questions about signals and slots, go ahead and put them in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Signals and slots can be maybe a little bit tricky when you first start working with them. But again, the documentation is your guide. So go out here, take a look at the documentation, see what signals and slots are attached. And also, like in text changed, if I click on this, and you'll see the text argument is the new text. Yeah, so it'll give you what's actually going to come out of that signal automatically. So again, documentation for PySide, Qt for Python, is pretty decent these days. I'm in here quite a bit when I need to look something up, and it's improved quite a bit over the years. You can look up any signal and slot on any widget right from here. So again, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments below. And other than that, happy coding.